A man without a home, a boy cornered by cruelty, and a startling revelation about the child's father that would change everything. Serenity Park was Caleb's sanctuary, the one place he could breathe in a measure of peace, his back finding solace against the coarse, textured bark of a towering maple tree as the world spun on, oblivious to him. For just a breath, Caleb could almost allow himself to forget the immense weight of his reality, until a sudden, sharp cry shattered the calm, followed by the hollow, cruel laughter of older boys. Caleb's eyes instantly flew toward the playground, where a small boy, no older than 7 or perhaps 8, was being hemmed in by a circle of menacing youths. The child, his face a canvas of pale fear, clung to his backpack as if it were his last anchor in a stormy sea. "Please, just stop," the boy pleaded, his voice a fragile whisper nearly swallowed by the bully's relentless taunts. Caleb's hands tightened on the worn, familiar fabric of his jacket. Every instinct screamed at him to remain invisible, to sidestep the coming trouble. But then he saw him, the ringleader, a tall boy with a permanent sneer etched onto his face, shoved the smaller child with such force that he stumbled and collapsed onto the unforgiving ground. "Think you're better than us 'cause your daddy's rich?" The leader jeered, punctuating his words by kicking a spray of dirt into the fallen boy's face as the others erupted in laughter, feeding the flames of his cruelty. Caleb's heart hammered against his ribs. He recognized that look in the bully's eyes, that hollow fury. It was the same haunted expression he had once seen in his own reflection as a lost and angry teenager. This boy, however, he didn't deserve this torment. No one ever did. Without a second thought, Caleb rose from his spot beneath the tree, his feet carrying him toward the confrontation. His steps were slow yet unyielding, each one a silent drumbeat counting down in his mind. "Hey!" Caleb called out, his voice steady, calm yet firm. The bullies, lost in their vicious game, didn't hear him at first. "I said hey." This time the leader finally glanced up, his amusement souring into irritation. "What do you want, old man?" he sneered, his bravado a thin mask for his surprise. "Leave him alone," Caleb commanded, his gaze locking onto the leaders, an unshakable anchor of resolve. He didn't raise his voice, but a sharp, undeniable edge in his tone made the entire group hesitate. "And who's gonna make us?" another boy challenged, though his bluster was undermined by the nervous step he took backward, suddenly uncertain about the man who stood before them. Caleb offered no verbal reply. He simply held their gaze, his stare a silent, unwavering challenge, daring them to test his will. A tense moment of silence stretched between them, and in that quiet, you could see the leader reassess the situation, realizing this was a battle not worth fighting. "Come on, let's go," the leader grumbled, shoving his hands deep into his pockets as he turned away, his followers trailing reluctantly behind him. "This kid ain't worth it." Caleb watched them retreat, his muscles coiled tight until they vanished from sight. Only then did he allow himself to turn his full attention to the small boy still on the ground. "You all right, kid?" Caleb asked, his voice softening as he knelt beside him. The boy looked up, his eyes wide and shimmering with unshed tears. He managed a small nod, though his tiny frame was racked with tremors. Caleb extended a hand, and after a brief, uncertain pause, the boy took it, allowing the stranger to help him back to his feet. "Thank you," the boy whispered, hugging his backpack to his chest like a shield. I didn't know what to do." "You don't need to thank me," Caleb said, gently brushing a smudge of dirt from the boy's shoulder. "Those guys are just bullies. They aren't nearly as tough as they pretend to be." The boy nodded again, wiping at his eyes with the back of his hand. "I'm Leo," he offered, his voice still trembling slightly. "Caleb," he replied, a small reassuring smile touching his lips. "You shouldn't be out here all by yourself. Where are your folks?" "My dad's coming to get me," Leo explained, his eyes darting nervously around the park, as if the bullies might reappear at any moment. Caleb scanned the area, noticing for the first time the fine quality of Leo's clothes and the expensive-looking backpack he wore. This child was from another world entirely, a world galaxies away from Caleb's own harsh reality. But right now, in this shared moment, none of that mattered. "All right," Caleb said, his voice a steady comfort. How about I wait with you until he gets here? Leo's eyes lit up at the suggestion, and he nodded with eager relief. Caleb guided him to the bench he had occupied earlier, and they sat together, the thick tension in the air slowly beginning to dissolve. They didn't speak much after that, but it was a comfortable silence, a shared space where Leo seemed to finally relax, knowing that someone was there, a guardian who wouldn't let the bullies hurt him again. Caleb sat quietly, his gaze fixed on the park's entrance, half expecting more trouble to find them. Minutes stretched on, and then a sleek black sedan purred to a stop at the curb. Leo's face ignited with joy, and he leaped to his feet. Caleb rose as well, watching as a tall man in an impeccably tailored suit emerged from the car, his eyes instantly finding his son. "Dad!" Leo cried, running into his arms. The man's stern features melted as he saw his son, and he dropped to one knee to embrace him tightly. "Are you okay, Leo? What happened?" Leo pointed back toward Caleb, who now stood a few paces away, his hands buried in his pockets. "Dad, this is Caleb. He helped me when some kids were being mean." Marcus Crichton, Leo's father, stood up, his gaze falling on Caleb, his expression hardening almost imperceptibly. "Thank you for helping my son," he said, his tone polite but unmistakably distant. Caleb just nodded, his eyes meeting Marcus's for a fleeting moment before dropping to the ground. "Just glad he's all right." Marcus didn't respond right away, instead placing a protective hand on Leo's shoulder and beginning to steer him toward the car. "We need to get going, Leo. Say goodbye." Leo looked back at Caleb, a small frown creasing his brow. "Bye, Caleb, thank you." "Take care, kid," Caleb replied, forcing a smile. He watched them get into the car and drive away, the silence of the park rushing back in to fill the void. As the sound of the engine faded, Caleb released a long, slow breath and returned to his spot under the tree. He sat down, pulling his thin coat tighter against the rising autumn chill. The world moved on as it always did. But today, for one brief, significant moment, Caleb had made a difference. He leaned back against the solid trunk, closing his eyes. Tomorrow the struggle would resume. But for now, at least for tonight, he had something to hold on to. A potent reminder that despite everything, he could still do some good in this world. Caleb leaned back against the bench, his eyes half closed, listening to the soft rustle of leaves whispering overhead. The surge of adrenaline from the confrontation was now ebbing away, leaving a familiar, dull ache deep in his bones. It hadn't been a physical fight, but the sheer tension of the moment, the ghosts of memories it had stirred up, left him feeling drained. He had expected the boy to leave with his father without a second glance, but instead, he sensed a small presence beside him. Opening his eyes, he found Leo standing there, clutching his backpack, a look of hesitation on his face. "Can I sit with you?" Leo asked, his voice small and uncertain. Caleb arched an eyebrow in surprise. "Shouldn't you be with your dad?" Leo glanced toward the park entrance where the sleek car had vanished. "He's coming back. He just had to take a call." Caleb nodded slowly. He wasn't accustomed to people lingering after they had gotten what they needed from him. But there was something in the boy's eyes, curiosity perhaps, or a genuine gratitude, that stopped Caleb from sending him away. He shifted on the bench, making space. "Sure, kid," Caleb said, patting the spot next to him. "Have a seat." Leo climbed onto the bench, his short legs dangling high above the ground. For a moment, they sat in a comfortable quiet, the ambient sounds of the park filling the space between them. Caleb was content to let the silence be. But he could feel the boy's eyes on him, as if Leo were trying to solve a puzzle he couldn't quite comprehend. "Why did you help me?" Leo asked suddenly, his question cutting through the quiet. Caleb didn't reply immediately. He wasn't used to explaining his actions, especially to a child. But something about Leo's earnest gaze made him truly consider the question. "Because you needed help," Caleb said at last, his voice soft but firm. "No one should have to face something like that alone." Leo frowned, as if trying to grasp a complex idea. "But you don't even know me." Caleb let out a soft chuckle, a sound more like a quiet breath. "Don't need to. Helping someone isn't about knowing them. Sometimes it's just enough to be there." Leo seemed to ponder this, his brow furrowed in deep thought. "Do you live here?" he asked, looking around the park as if he might find a hidden cottage nestled among the trees. "In a way," Caleb replied, sidestepping the directness of the question. "I'm around here a lot." Leo didn't push for more details, but Caleb could see the gears turning in his young mind. There was a sharpness in the boy's gaze that reminded Caleb of his own younger self, always questioning, always trying to piece together the world. "Do you have kids?" Leo asked, surprising Caleb again with his straightforwardness. "No, I don't," Caleb said, shaking his head. "Never had a family like that." Leo tilted his head, his eyes shining with pure curiosity. "Why not?" Caleb hesitated, caught off guard by the innocent query. How could he possibly explain the labyrinth of choices, the wrong turns, the cruel twists of fate that had led him to this very bench? He had no desire to burden this child with his life story, a tale filled with far more shadows than light. "Life just didn't turn out that way for me," Caleb said simply, hoping it would suffice. Leo seemed to sense this was a topic best left unexplored, and he nodded, his attention drifting back to the park. They sat in quiet companionship for a few more moments, the comfortable silence returning. After a while Leo spoke again, his voice a little softer this time. "Do you get lonely?" Caleb blinked, taken aback by the question. Loneliness was a feeling he had grown so accustomed to, a presence he rarely acknowledged, even to himself. It was like a threadbare coat he wore every single day, frayed at the cuffs but utterly familiar. "Sometimes," Caleb admitted, his voice barely rising above a whisper. "But you get used to it." Leo didn't say anything right away. Instead, he pulled his backpack onto his lap and began fiddling with the zipper. "I get lonely too," he confessed, his voice so quiet Caleb almost missed it. Caleb looked at the boy, truly surprised. Leo had a father who clearly doted on him, a life that, from the outside, appeared to be overflowing with everything a child could ever want. But loneliness, he knew, was not discerning. It crept into the hearts of the rich and the poor with equal stealth. "Why do you feel lonely?" Caleb asked gently, careful not to probe too deeply. Leo shrugged, his eyes fixed on the ground. "My dad's always busy. He's a lawyer, so he works a lot. I don't get to see him much." Caleb nodded, understanding more than he showed. He knew the ache of wanting someone's time, their attention, only to find them perpetually out of reach. It was a different brand of loneliness, perhaps, but it stung just the same. "He cares about you, though," Caleb said, trying to offer a sliver of comfort. "You can tell just by how he rushed over here when he knew you were in trouble." A faint smile touched Leo's lips at that, though the sadness in his eyes didn't fully dissipate. "Yeah, I know, but I wish he wasn't so busy all the time." Caleb had no easy solution for that. He couldn't tell the boy that things would magically improve, or that his father would suddenly find more hours in the day. Life wasn't a fairy tale, and Caleb was not in the business of selling false hope. Instead, he reached over and gave Leo's shoulder a gentle, firm squeeze. "You're a strong kid. Don't you forget that." Leo looked up at Caleb, his eyes wide and searching. For a second, it seemed he was about to say something more, but before he could, the sound of approaching footsteps interrupted them. Marcus Creighton was walking back toward them, phone in hand, the deep frown on his face softening as he saw Leo. He pocketed his phone and approached the bench, giving Caleb a polite, formal nod. "Thank you for keeping an eye on him," Marcus said, his tone still reserved but less distant than before. "No problem," Caleb replied, rising from the bench. "Just glad he's safe." Marcus placed a hand on Leo's shoulder, gently guiding him off the bench. "We should get going, Leo." Leo didn't move immediately. He looked up at Caleb, a question shimmering in his eyes, but whatever it was, he left it unasked. Instead, he just nodded, his small hand gripping his father's larger one. "Will I see you again?" Leo asked, his voice filled with hope. Caleb glanced at Marcus, who was watching him intently, before turning his gaze back to Leo. "Maybe. You take care, all right?" Leo smiled, a small but genuine smile, before allowing his father to lead him away. Caleb watched them go, his heart feeling a little lighter than it had before. As they walked, Leo glanced back over his shoulder and waved. Caleb raised a hand in return, a rare, true smile tugging at the corners of his lips. He remained in the park until the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in fiery strokes as the last vestiges of daylight vanished. For the first time in a very long time, Caleb felt that the loneliness he carried wasn't quite as heavy as it usually was. He had forged a connection, however brief, with someone who saw him not as a homeless man, but as a person. Someone who had made a difference. And that, for now, was more than enough. Marcus Creighton gripped the steering wheel, his mind a whirlwind of thoughts as he navigated the familiar city streets. Leo sat quietly in the back, unusually subdued, his small face a silhouette pressed against the window. Marcus stole a glance at his son in the rearview mirror, a familiar knot of worry tightening in his gut. Leo had been quiet since they left the park, and Marcus knew something was still troubling him. But it was more than that. Marcus couldn't shake the image of the man Caleb sitting with Leo on that bench. The man's clothes were old, worn thin by time and hardship, his eyes holding a weary, distant look. Marcus had seen men like him before, people living on the fringes of society, forgotten, locked in a daily struggle for simple survival. He had always been careful to maintain a safe distance, to shield Leo from that world, not from a lack of compassion, but from the pragmatic fear of dangers he couldn't always predict or control. Yet today, that very world had crashed into his own, and it unsettled him in a way he couldn't quite articulate. "Dad?" Leo's voice sliced through the silence, pulling Marcus from his thoughts. "Yeah, buddy?" Marcus replied, forcing a calm he didn't feel into his tone. "Why did we have to leave so fast?" Leo's question was soft, laced with a hint of disappointment. Marcus took a slow breath, choosing his words with the precision of a lawyer. "I just didn't want to keep you out there, Leo. I know you've had a rough day." Leo didn't seem convinced by the answer. He shifted in his seat, his small hands restlessly toying with the strap of his backpack. "But Caleb was nice. He helped me when those kids were being mean." "I know," Marcus said, his tone softening, "and I am truly grateful to him for that." "Then why did you act like you didn't want me to talk to him?" Leo's question hung in the air, its innocent logic making Marcus's chest feel tight. Marcus hesitated, unsure how to explain his deeply ingrained caution to his son without sounding judgmental or unkind. He knew the world wasn't simple, not black and white, but as a father, his primary instinct was always to protect, even if it meant erring on the side of overprotection. "Leo, sometimes people we don't know, they might have their own problems," Marcus began carefully. "It's not that they're bad people, but we have to be careful, especially when we don't know anything about them." Leo was quiet for a moment, processing his father's words. "But you didn't even talk to him. How do you know he has problems?" Marcus sighed, running a hand through his perfectly styled hair. Leo was a sharp kid, sometimes too sharp for his own good. "It's not always about what people say, buddy. It's about what you can see. Caleb, well, he might be going through some very tough times. I just want to make sure you're safe." "But he was safe," Leo insisted, a note of frustration creeping into his voice. "He was the only one who helped me when those boys were being mean. He didn't even ask for anything. He just wanted to help." Marcus frowned, his knuckles whitening as he gripped the wheel. Leo's words struck a chord. It was true. Caleb hadn't asked for a single thing, hadn't shown any hint of an ulterior motive. But Marcus couldn't shake the unease that lingered, the protective instinct that roared to life whenever Leo was involved. They pulled into the driveway of their house, a large, modern structure in a quiet, affluent neighborhood. The driveway was framed by meticulously trimmed hedges, and the porch lights flickered on automatically as they approached. Marcus parked the car and turned to face his son, who was still staring out the window. "Listen, Leo," Marcus said gently. "I'm not saying Caleb is a bad person. He might be a very good man who just needs some help. But as your dad, it's my job to make sure you're always safe, no matter what." Leo finally turned to look at his father, his eyes searching Marcus's face. "You're always working, Dad. You're not here a lot. But today, Caleb was there." The words hit Marcus like a physical blow. He knew Leo missed him, knew his demanding career often kept him away from home far longer than he would like. But hearing it stated so plainly by his son, without accusation but with simple, heartbreaking fact, made it all the more painful. Marcus took a deep breath, his resolve beginning to soften. "I know, buddy, and I'm sorry for that. I'll try to be around more, okay?" Leo nodded, though the sadness in his eyes remained. "Can we see Caleb again?" Marcus wasn't sure how to answer. On one hand, he wanted to honor Leo's feelings. Caleb had, after all, been a hero when his son needed one. On the other, his instincts were still screaming at him to keep Leo far away from any potential risk. "I'll think about it," Marcus said, a non-committal answer he knew was unsatisfying. "Let's get inside and have some dinner, all right?" Leo nodded again, his shoulders slumping slightly as he climbed out of the car. Marcus followed, his thoughts heavy as they entered the house. The warmth and familiar comfort of their home usually brought him a sense of peace. But tonight, the disquiet lingered. Dinner was a quiet affair, the usual light-hearted chatter replaced by a contemplative silence. Leo picked at his food, his mind clearly somewhere else. Marcus tried to draw him into conversation, but the boy's responses were brief, his thoughts still orbiting around Caleb and the day's events. After dinner, Leo went up to his room, leaving Marcus alone at the large kitchen table. He leaned back in his chair, staring at the empty plate before him, his mind a battlefield of conflicting emotions. Gratitude toward Caleb for protecting his son, worry about the man's intentions, and a heavy guilt over how he had handled the entire situation. He couldn't ignore the glaring fact that Caleb had done something he had failed to do: be there for Leo when he needed someone. But Marcus's protectiveness, his innate need to control every situation, had overshadowed his gratitude. And now, he was left questioning if he had made the right call. Marcus pushed back from the table and walked into his study, where towering stacks of case files and legal briefs covered his desk. His work was his life. He was good at it, respected for it, but it had also cost him precious time with his son, time he could never get back. He sat down at the desk and opened a file, but the words on the page blurred into meaningless shapes. All he could see was Leo's face, his disappointment, his yearning for something Marcus couldn't always provide. With a heavy sigh, Marcus closed the file and leaned back in his chair. He knew he couldn't solve every problem with work, and he couldn't shield Leo from every hurt the world had to offer. But he could try to understand, to be present for his son in a way that didn't always come naturally to him. And maybe, just maybe, that meant giving Caleb a chance, a real chance to prove that his intentions were as good as they seemed. Marcus made a mental note to visit the park again, but this time he would go with an open mind. Perhaps Caleb wasn't just a man in need, but someone who could teach them both something valuable about kindness, about being present in a world that so often pulled them in 1,000 different directions. The thought was unsettling, but it was also strangely a comfort. For now, it was enough to know that he could try. The following Saturday dawned with a sky of brilliant cloudless blue, the kind of morning that felt like an invitation. James could hear the birds chirping just outside as he sat at the kitchen table, staring into the depths of his coffee cup, lost in thought. Upstairs, Leo was getting ready. Today they were going back to the park. Marcus had wrestled with the decision all week. His initial apprehension about returning, about a possible encounter with Caleb, had slowly been replaced by a quiet sense of duty. Leo had been right. Caleb had been there for him when it counted. The very least Marcus could do was give the man a fair chance. He wasn't entirely sure what he would say to Caleb if they did see him. The man had saved his son from harm, a debt Marcus felt deeply. But there was also a wariness, an ingrained caution he couldn't completely shake. Marcus had built his entire life on the principle of managing risks, both in the courtroom and in his personal life. But today, he was deliberately stepping outside that carefully constructed comfort zone, driven by a complex mix of gratitude and the profound need to set a better example for his son. "Dad, are we going?" Leo's voice sliced through Marcus's reverie. The boy stood at the bottom of the stairs, his face bright with anticipation, already sporting his favorite baseball cap with his small backpack slung over one shoulder. Marcus managed a smile, pushing his lingering doubts to the back of his mind. "Yeah, we're going. Let's get out there before it gets too hot." The drive to the park was quiet, but it was a different quiet from the tense silence that had filled the car earlier in the week. Leo was humming softly to himself, his excitement a palpable energy, while Marcus focused on the road, turning over possible opening lines in his head should they run into Caleb. When they arrived, Serenity Park was already alive with activity. Families strolled along the paths. Children's laughter echoed from the playground, and joggers traced the park's perimeter. Marcus scanned the area as they walked, his eyes instinctively searching for the familiar, solitary figure he had seen just days before. "Do you think Caleb will be here?" Leo asked, his voice brimming with hope. Marcus hesitated, not wanting to build up Leo's expectations only to have them dashed. "Maybe. We'll see." They wandered through the park, passing the very spot where Leo had been bullied. Marcus felt a sharp pang of guilt, remembering how desperately he had wanted to flee that day, to put as much distance as possible between Leo and the ugly incident. But seeing the park now so full of life and vibrant energy, he understood why Leo had wanted to return. There was a comfort in the familiarity of the place, even with the shadow of that memory. As they rounded a corner near a dense cluster of trees, Marcus spotted him. Caleb was sitting on a bench, his posture relaxed but his eyes watchful and distant. He wore the same clothes as before, a well-worn jacket over a faded shirt, but there was a certain calmness about him that hadn't been there during their first tense encounter. He seemed lost in thought, his gaze fixed on something far away, until Leo's excited shout pulled him back to the present. "Caleb!" Leo called, breaking into a full run toward the bench. Caleb looked up, a flicker of surprise crossing his face, quickly followed by a warm smile that softened his rugged features. He stood as Leo reached him, crouching down to meet the boy at eye level. "Hey there, kid," Caleb said, his voice warm and genuine. "Wasn't expecting to see you again so soon." Leo beamed, his face alight with joy. "We came back to see you. Right, Dad?" Marcus, who had been walking a few paces behind, caught up to them. He nodded, feeling a bit awkward but determined to see this through. "Yeah, we thought we'd come by the park again." Caleb straightened up, his expression becoming more guarded as his eyes met Marcus's. "I'm glad you did," he said simply. A brief, uncertain pause hung between them, a moment where neither man seemed to know what to say next. It was Leo who broke the silence, tugging on Caleb's hand. "Will you play catch with us?" Leo asked, his eyes wide with hope. Caleb glanced at Marcus, as if seeking permission. Marcus gave a slight nod, offering a small, tentative smile. "Sure, if you want to." Caleb's smile returned, this time more genuine. "All right, but I'm warning you, I'm not as fast as I used to be." Leo laughed, already pulling a small baseball from his backpack. He handed it to Caleb before jogging a few steps away, his excitement infectious. Marcus watched from the sidelines at first, as Caleb and Leo began to toss the ball back and forth, their easy laughter mingling with the ambient sounds of the park. He observed the way Caleb interacted with his son. There was a natural ease to it, a gentle rapport that Marcus couldn't help but admire. Caleb was patient and encouraging, never letting the ball lie on the ground for long. He treated Leo not just with kindness, but with a level of respect that Marcus found himself appreciating more and more with each passing minute. "Why don't you join us?" Caleb called out to Marcus after a while, tossing the ball toward him with a friendly grin. Marcus caught it, surprised by the invitation. He hadn't expected to be included so readily. But the genuine warmth in Caleb's voice made it clear the offer was sincere. With a smile, Marcus stepped into the game, throwing the ball back to Leo, who caught it with a triumphant shout. The three of them played together, the tension that had lingered between Marcus and Caleb slowly dissolving with the rhythm of the game. There were no deep conversations, no probing questions, just the simple, shared joy of a game of catch on a sunny afternoon. As they played, Marcus found himself relaxing in a way he hadn't in a very long time. He was so used to being in control, to analyzing every situation from every possible angle. But here, under the warm sun, with his son's happy laughter filling the air, he let go of that need, if only for a little while. He realized that Caleb wasn't just a stranger who had saved his son. He was a man with his own story, his own struggles, and perhaps his own profound need for connection. After about an hour, they finally called it a day, all of them slightly winded but smiling. Leo was flushed with happiness, his earlier reticence completely gone. Marcus could see how much this moment meant to him, how much he had needed it. "Thanks for playing with us," Leo said as they walked back toward the park entrance. "Any time, kid," Caleb replied, ruffling Leo's hair. He turned to Marcus, his tone shifting slightly. "And thank you for giving me a chance." Marcus nodded, meeting Caleb's gaze directly. "I'm the one who should be thanking you. For what you did for Leo, I wasn't sure at first, but I can see now that you're a good man, Caleb." Caleb smiled, a faint trace of sadness touching his eyes. "I've made my share of mistakes, Mr. Creighton, but I'm trying to make up for them." Marcus considered that, feeling a pang of understanding. Everyone had their own battles, their own regrets. Caleb's journey had clearly been a difficult one, but it was a path he was still walking, still trying to find his way. "Maybe we can help each other," Marcus said, the offer coming from a place of unexpected sincerity. "If you ever need anything, don't hesitate to ask." Caleb looked surprised, but there was a deep gratitude in his eyes. "I appreciate that. More than you know." They exchanged a look, a mutual understanding passing between them. It wasn't the start of a friendship, not yet, but it was the beginning of something, a bridge being built between two vastly different lives. As they parted ways, with Leo giving Caleb one last enthusiastic wave, Marcus felt a sense of peace settle over him. The doubts that had plagued him were still there, but they were quieter now, overshadowed by the undeniable feeling that he had done the right thing. Caleb had protected his son when he couldn't, and now in some small way, Marcus had repaid that kindness. But more than that, he had shown Leo what it meant to trust, to give people a chance even when it feels uncomfortable. And for that, Marcus felt a sense of pride that warmed him from the inside out. As they drove home, with Leo chattering happily in the back seat, Marcus realized that today had been more than just a return to the park. It had been a step forward for all of them. The next weekend came around faster than Marcus expected, and he found himself looking forward to it, a fact he wouldn't have readily admitted aloud. The past week had been a blur of work, the usual intense grind of cases and court appearances. But in the quiet moments, his thoughts had often drifted back to that sunny afternoon in the park, and more specifically, to Caleb. Marcus had always prided himself on his ability to read people. In his profession, it was a skill that often spelled the difference between winning and losing. But Caleb was an anomaly, a man who didn't fit neatly into any of the boxes Marcus typically used to categorize the world. Caleb had saved his son, yes, but there was more to him than that. Layers of a life that Marcus couldn't yet see, but felt compelled to understand. It was this curiosity, mingled with a growing respect, that led Marcus to suggest another trip to the park. Leo was, of course, overjoyed, practically vibrating with excitement at the idea. And so, with a sense of purpose that surprised even himself, Marcus packed a small cooler with sandwiches and drinks, a simple gesture that felt both casual and deeply significant. They arrived at Serenity Park just before noon. The day was warm, but a gentle breeze kept the heat from becoming oppressive. Families were out enjoying the sun, the sound of children's laughter a constant happy melody. As they walked toward the familiar bench, Marcus spotted Caleb sitting in the same spot as before, his posture relaxed, but his gaze distant and thoughtful. "Dad, there he is!" Leo's voice cut through Marcus's thoughts, and before he could respond, the boy was already running ahead. Caleb looked up, a broad smile spreading across his face as he saw Leo approaching. He stood to greet the boy, crouching down to give him a high five. By the time Marcus caught up, the two were already deep in conversation, with Leo excitedly recounting the highlights of his week at school. "Hey, Caleb," Marcus said, offering a nod as he approached. "Marcus," Caleb replied, straightening up. There was a warmth in his voice that hadn't been there before, a familiarity that made the greeting feel more genuine. Marcus gestured to the cooler he was carrying. "We brought some lunch if you'd like to join us." Caleb's eyes flickered with surprise, but he quickly nodded. "I'd like that." They found a spot under a large oak tree, its broad leaves providing a welcome respite from the sun. Marcus spread out a blanket and they all settled down, Leo digging into his sandwich with an enthusiasm only a child can muster. For a while, the three of them ate in a comfortable silence. the quiet punctuated only by Leo's occasional comments about school or the park. It wasn't until they had finished eating that Marcus decided to broach the topic that had been on his mind all week. "Caleb," Marcus began, his tone careful, "I've been thinking a lot about what you said last time, about making up for mistakes." Caleb's expression shifted, the easy smile fading slightly as a more guarded look took its place. He set down his water bottle, his hands resting quietly in his lap. "Yeah?" Marcus nodded, choosing his words with care. "I don't want to pry, but I think it might help if you talked about it. Sometimes sharing your story can be a way to move forward." Caleb looked away, his gaze fixing on a point in the distance. For a moment, Marcus worried he had overstepped, pushed too hard. But then Caleb let out a deep, weary sigh, and when he spoke, his voice was low, almost as if he were speaking only to himself. "It's a long story, Marcus, and not a pretty one." Marcus nodded, his expression open and encouraging. "I've got time." Leo, sensing the shift in the conversation's tone, looked between the two men. "Is it a sad story?" Caleb managed a faint smile, though there was no humor in it. "Yeah, kid, it's a sad one." Marcus placed a reassuring hand on Leo's shoulder, then turned his attention back to Caleb. "We're listening." Caleb was silent for a few long moments, gathering his thoughts. When he finally began to speak, his voice was steady, but it carried an undercurrent of raw emotion that Marcus hadn't heard before. "I wasn't always like this," Caleb began, gesturing vaguely to his worn clothes and tired appearance. "I had a life, a good one, at least by most standards. Grew up in a decent neighborhood, went to school, got a job. I worked as a mechanic for years. Loved it too. There's something honest about working with your hands, about fixing things that are broken." Marcus nodded, listening intently as Caleb continued. "But life doesn't always go the way you plan," Caleb said, his voice darkening. "I got mixed up with the wrong crowd. Old friends, mostly. We started drinking, doing drugs, just to take the edge off at first. It was just a way to unwind. But before I knew it, I was in deep. Lost my job, my home, everything." He paused, swallowing hard against a difficult memory. "I tried to get clean more than once, but it's not easy when you've got no support. No one who believes in you. Eventually, I just gave up. Figured this was how it was going to be for the rest of my life." Leo was watching Caleb with wide, solemn eyes, the gravity of the story not lost on him. Marcus felt a tightness in his own chest as he listened, the weight of Caleb's words heavy in the air. "What happened then?" Marcus asked quietly. Caleb shrugged, a gesture that was far from casual. "I drifted. Ended up on the streets just trying to survive. It's funny, in a way. I used to fix things for a living, but I couldn't fix my own life. I was angry for a long time. At myself, at the world. But that kind of anger? It eats away at you." He looked down at his hands, the calluses and scars a testament to the life he had lived. "I've been clean for a while now. But it's not easy. Every day is a fight. And some days I wonder if it's even worth it." Marcus felt a surge of empathy for the man sitting across from him. Caleb's story was one of profound loss and struggle, but it was also one of incredible resilience. He had been through hell, and though he was still standing, the journey had clearly taken its toll. "You're here," Marcus said, his voice firm, "and that counts for something. You saved my son, Caleb. That means you're worth something." Caleb looked up, his eyes filled with a complex mix of emotions. Gratitude, disbelief, a flicker of hope. "I don't know if I believe that," he admitted. "But hearing it helps." Leo, who had been listening quietly, suddenly spoke up. "You're a good person, Caleb. You helped me when no one else did." Caleb's expression softened, and he reached out to ruffle Leo's hair. "Thanks, kid. That means a lot." There was a moment of silence as they all absorbed the weight of what had been shared. Marcus could see the toll Caleb's past had taken on him, the way it had shaped the man he was today. But he also saw something else, a fierce determination to keep going, to try and make things right, even when it seemed impossible. Marcus cleared his throat, his voice steady. "Caleb, I want to help. I don't know exactly how yet, but I think we can figure it out. Together." Caleb looked at him, surprise flickering across his face. "You don't have to do that, Marcus. I've made my peace with where I am." "I'm not doing it out of pity," Marcus replied firmly. "I'm doing it because I believe in second chances, and because you've shown me that you deserve one." Caleb was quiet for a long moment, his eyes searching Marcus's face, as if trying to find some hidden motive. But all he found was sincerity. And it was that sincerity that finally broke through the walls he had built around himself. "All right," Caleb said finally, his voice low. "I'm not sure where to start. But, all right." Marcus smiled, a sense of purpose settling over him. "We'll figure it out, one step at a time." As they packed up and prepared to leave the park, Marcus felt a sense of hope he hadn't expected. Caleb's story was far from over, and there were still many battles to be fought. But for the first time, Marcus felt like they were on the right path. Leo walked between them, holding Caleb's hand on one side and Marcus's on the other. The sun was beginning to set, casting long shadows across the park, but the warmth in the air remained. As they walked, Marcus couldn't help but feel that in some small, significant way, they were all beginning to heal. And perhaps, just perhaps, this was the start of something new. A chance for all of them to find the redemption they needed, together. Monday morning arrived with its usual frantic pace, but for Marcus, there was an added layer of anticipation. He had managed to arrange a meeting for Caleb, a job interview at a local auto repair shop. The shop was a reputable establishment, known for its quality work and community involvement, and Marcus felt it could be the perfect fit for Caleb, given his background as a mechanic. As Marcus drove Leo to school, he glanced at the clock. He still had some time before the interview. Leo was uncharacteristically quiet, his usual morning chatter replaced by a thoughtful silence. "Excited for school today?" Marcus asked, attempting to break the quiet. Leo shrugged, not meeting his father's gaze. "Yeah, I guess." Marcus could tell there was more on his son's mind. "You okay?" Leo looked up, his eyes filled with a mixture of hope and concern. "I just hope Caleb gets the job." "He's really nice, Dad. I want him to be happy." Marcus smiled, feeling a surge of pride at his son's empathy. "Me too, buddy. Caleb deserves a chance to get his life back on track. We'll do everything we can to help him." Leo nodded, his face brightening a little. "I know you're trying to help him, Dad." "Thanks." They arrived at the school and Marcus gave Leo a quick hug before watching him head inside. As he drove away, his thoughts turned back to Caleb. He hoped the interview would go well, but he knew there were challenges ahead. Caleb's past would likely come up, and Marcus wasn't sure how the shop owner would react. At the auto repair shop, Marcus arrived early to ensure everything was in place. The shop was a bustling hub of activity, with mechanics working on various cars in different stages of repair. The air was thick with the smell of motor oil and gasoline, mingling with the sounds of clanking tools and rumbling engines. The shop owner, a burly man named Gus, greeted Marcus with a firm handshake. Gus was known for his gruff exterior, but he had a reputation for being fair and giving people a second chance. "Morning, Marcus," Gus said, wiping his hands on a rag. "You ready for this?" Marcus nodded, feeling a combination of nerves and determination. "Yeah, Caleb should be here any minute." Gus glanced at the clock. "Got a few minutes. I'll show you around while we wait." Marcus followed Gus through the shop, observing the organized chaos. The place was clean and well-maintained, with tools and equipment neatly arranged. Gus explained the shop's operations, his pride in his work evident in his voice. "So what's the story with this Caleb guy?" Gus asked as they walked. Marcus took a deep breath, choosing his words carefully. "Caleb's had a rough time recently, but he's got experience in mechanics. He's trying to turn his life around. I think he's worth giving a chance." Gus nodded slowly, his expression thoughtful. "Everyone's got a past, Marcus. It's what they do with it that counts." Before Marcus could respond, the door to the shop opened, and Caleb stepped inside. He looked nervous, his clothes clean but still worn, and he carried a small duffel bag slung over one shoulder. As he approached, Marcus could see the mix of determination and anxiety on his face. "Hey, Caleb," Marcus greeted him, offering a reassuring smile. Caleb returned the smile, though it was hesitant. "Hi, Marcus." Gus stepped forward, extending a hand. "Gus." Glad you could make it. Ready for the interview? Caleb shook Gus's hand, nodding. Yes, sir. Ready as I'll ever be. Great. Let's get started, Gus said, leading Caleb to a small office at the back of the shop. Marcus followed, taking a seat on a chair just outside the office as Gus closed the door behind them. The interview began with standard questions about Caleb's experience and skills. Marcus listened through the thin walls, catching snippets of Caleb's answers. Caleb spoke about his previous work, his skills in repairing various types of vehicles, and his commitment to staying clean. His voice was steady, though Marcus could detect an edge of uncertainty. After a while, the office door opened, and Caleb emerged, his face a mask of nervous anticipation. Gus followed him, his expression unreadable. Thanks for coming in, Caleb, Gus said, offering a firm handshake. We'll be in touch soon. Caleb accepted the handshake with a nod, then turned to Marcus. How'd it go? Marcus could see the anxiety in his eyes, the way he held himself rigidly. I think it went well, Marcus said, trying to sound positive. Gus seemed interested. Caleb managed a small, hopeful smile. I hope so. They left the shop together, Caleb's steps slow and thoughtful. Marcus could sense the weight of the moment, the hope and uncertainty that Caleb carried with him. Do you want to grab a coffee or something? Marcus offered, wanting to provide some encouragement. Caleb shook his head, though he looked grateful. No thanks. I think I just need some time to think. Marcus nodded, understanding. All right, just know that whatever happens, you've got support. We're in this together. Caleb nodded, his eyes meeting Marcus's with a mixture of gratitude and nervousness. I appreciate that. Thanks, Marcus. As Caleb walked away, Marcus watched him go, feeling a pang of empathy. He knew the outcome of the interview was still uncertain, but he admired Caleb's courage and determination. Marcus drove home, the day's events weighing heavily on his mind. He hoped that Caleb would get the job, that this would be the break he needed to start over. But beyond that, Marcus hoped that Caleb would find a sense of purpose and belonging, something that had been missing from his life for a long time. When he arrived home, Leo was already back from school, his face bright with excitement. How did it go? Did Caleb get the job? Marcus sat down beside him, his smile reassuring. We don't know yet. Gus said he'd be in touch soon. Leo's face fell slightly, but he quickly rallied, his optimism returning. I hope he gets it. He really deserves a chance. Marcus wrapped an arm around his son, feeling a sense of pride in Leo's unwavering support for Caleb. So do I, buddy. So do I. They spent the evening together, the atmosphere in the house warm and comforting. As he prepared for bed, Marcus found himself reflecting on the day's events. He felt a renewed sense of purpose. Helping Caleb was more than just a favor. It was a chance to make a difference, to offer support and understanding in a world that often lacked both. And as he closed his eyes, he hoped that Caleb would find the opportunity he needed to rebuild his life, and that, in some small way, he had played a part in that journey. Wednesday dawned with a light drizzle that turned the city streets into slick, shiny ribbons of asphalt. Marcus had just finished his morning routine and was sipping coffee at the kitchen table when his phone buzzed on the countertop. The screen displayed Gus's name, and his heart gave a little jump. He had been waiting for this call. He took a deep breath and answered. Marcus Creighton. Hey, Marcus. Gus's voice came through steady and no-nonsense. Got a moment to talk? Of course, Marcus replied, trying to keep his tone casual despite the flutter of anticipation in his chest. I wanted to let you know we're offering Caleb the job, Gus said. He starts on Monday. Marcus felt a wave of profound relief wash over him. That's fantastic news. Thank you, Gus. No problem, Gus said. Caleb's got skills. He needs a shot, and I think he'll work out well here. After ending the call, Marcus leaned back in his chair, a wide, satisfied smile spreading across his face. Caleb had done it. He'd gotten the job. Marcus knew this was just the beginning of Caleb's journey, but it was a monumental step forward. He couldn't wait to share the news. He quickly grabbed his jacket and headed out the door. It was still drizzling, but Marcus barely noticed the weather as he made his way to Serenity Park. When he arrived, the park was quieter than usual, the rain keeping most people indoors. Marcus scanned the area and spotted Caleb sitting on their usual bench, his posture relaxed, but his eyes fixed on the damp ground. "Caleb!" Marcus called out as he approached. Caleb looked up, his expression unreadable. "I've got news." Caleb stood, a faint hint of curiosity in his eyes. "Good news, I hope." Marcus nodded, his excitement barely contained. Gus called. "You start on Monday." Caleb's eyes widened, and for a moment he was utterly silent. Then a broad, brilliant smile broke across his face, a smile filled with pure relief and unadulterated joy. "Are you serious?" "Absolutely," Marcus said, his own smile growing. "Gus said he was impressed with your skills. This is your chance, Caleb. Your chance to get back on your feet." Caleb let out a deep breath, the tension visibly melting from his shoulders. "Thank you, Marcus. I didn't know what to expect. I was afraid I might have messed it up." "You didn't," Marcus assured him. "You were honest, and you showed them what you could do. That's what counts." Caleb's smile didn't fade. "I've been looking for something like this for a long, long time. It means more than you know." Marcus nodded, feeling a deep sense of satisfaction. "I'm glad. And remember, if you need anything, just let me know. This is a new beginning for you." As they walked together, Caleb seemed lighter, more at ease. The rain had softened to a fine mist, and the park's colors seemed more vibrant against the gray sky. Marcus could see how much the job offer meant to Caleb, how it was like a beacon of hope after a long, dark journey. "Have you told anyone else?" Marcus asked as they neared the playground where Leo often played. Caleb shook his head. "Not yet. I wanted to wait until I knew for sure." Marcus nodded, understanding. "Well, I'm sure Leo will be thrilled to hear the news." They reached the playground just as Leo came running towards them, his face bright with curiosity. "What's going on? Did Caleb get the job?" Marcus grinned, ruffling Leo's hair. "He did. Caleb starts on Monday." Leo's face lit up with pure, uncontained excitement. "That's awesome, Caleb. You're going to be great." Caleb laughed, the sound rich with genuine happiness. "Thanks, kid. I hope so." They spent the rest of the afternoon at the park, the conversation flowing easily. Caleb and Leo played on the swings, laughing and chatting about everything from school to the new job. Marcus watched them, a feeling of deep contentment washing over him. He could see how much Caleb's presence had already begun to positively impact Leo's life. As the sun began to set, painting the clouds with hues of orange and pink, Marcus felt a profound sense of accomplishment. Caleb's new job was more than just a step towards financial stability. It was a chance for a fresh start, a way to rebuild and find a new sense of purpose. When it was time to leave, Caleb walked with them to their car. He turned to Marcus, his expression serious but hopeful. "I can't thank you enough for this, Marcus. It means the world to me." Marcus placed a reassuring hand on Caleb's shoulder. "You earned it. Just keep working hard and believe in yourself. That's all anyone can ask." Caleb nodded, his eyes filled with gratitude. "I will, and I won't forget this." As they said their goodbyes, Marcus felt a renewed sense of optimism. The road ahead for Caleb was still uncertain, but the offer of a job was a significant turning point. It was a chance to prove himself, to find stability, and to make a positive change in his life. Driving home, Leo chattered excitedly about Caleb's new job, his enthusiasm infectious. Marcus listened, feeling a deep sense of satisfaction. He had helped someone in need, and in doing so, had made a positive difference in their lives. As the car pulled into the driveway and evening settled over their neighborhood, Marcus looked at his son, feeling grateful for the bond they shared and for the opportunity to help others. The future was always uncertain, but for the first time in a long while it felt full of promise and hope. The first day of Caleb's new job arrived with a potent mix of excitement and nerves. Marcus could tell Caleb had been up since before dawn. His enthusiasm was palpable, but so was his anxiety. Marcus had offered to give him a ride to the shop, a gesture of support that Caleb had gratefully accepted. They were in the car, the city passing by in a blur of early morning activity. Caleb sat in the passenger seat, his hands gripping the edge of his jacket, his gaze fixed on the passing streets. "You ready for this?" Marcus asked, trying to sound casual. Caleb looked over, his eyes betraying a hint of uncertainty. "Yeah, nervous but ready." I haven't done this in a while. Marcus nodded. It's normal to be nervous. But you've got the skills. Just focus on showing them what you can do. Caleb managed a small smile, though it was tinged with apprehension. Thanks for the ride. I know it's just a small thing, but it means a lot. No problem, Marcus said. You've done a lot for us. It's the least I can do. As they pulled into the parking lot of the auto repair shop, Marcus could see the hustle and bustle of the morning shift already in full swing. Mechanics moved in and out, tools clinked, and the familiar smell of motor oil and gasoline hung in the air. Marcus parked the car and turned to Caleb. This is it. Just remember, take it one step at a time. You've got this. Caleb nodded, taking a deep breath. All right, I'll see you after work. Absolutely, Marcus said, giving him a reassuring pat on the shoulder. Good luck. Caleb stepped out of the car and made his way toward the shop. Marcus watched him go, his heart filled with hope and encouragement. It was a big day for Caleb, and Marcus knew it was only the beginning of what would be a challenging but rewarding journey. As Marcus drove home, his thoughts turned to Leo, who was eagerly awaiting news about Caleb's first day. When he arrived, Leo was already at the door, his face bright with curiosity. How did it go? He asked, his eyes wide with anticipation. Marcus knelt down to Leo's level, giving him a smile. Caleb's first day is underway. He was nervous, but he's got this. It's a big step. Leo's face lit up with excitement. That's awesome. I'm really happy for him. Marcus ruffled Leo's hair, feeling a surge of pride in his son's positive attitude. Me too, buddy. Caleb's got a chance to turn things around, and it's thanks to everyone who believed in him. The day passed in a routine of work and chores, but Marcus found himself checking his phone often, hoping for a message or call from Caleb. By late afternoon, as he was finishing up some work at home, his phone buzzed with a text message. It was from Caleb. First day went well. Exhausted but feeling good. Thanks for everything. Marcus read the message with a sense of relief and satisfaction. Caleb's first day had gone smoothly, and that was a positive sign. When Leo came home from school, he was bubbling with questions. How's Caleb doing? Did he say anything about his day? Marcus nodded, showing Leo the text message. He said it went well. He's tired, but he's feeling good about it. Leo grinned. That's great. I can't wait to see him again. Later that evening, as Marcus and Leo were having dinner, the doorbell rang. Marcus answered it to find Caleb standing on the porch, his expression tired but happy. Hey, Caleb, Marcus greeted him, stepping aside to let him in. How was your first day? Caleb stepped inside, a grateful smile on his face. It was good. Busy, but good. Everyone was welcoming, and I think I'm going to fit in well here. Leo came running up to greet Caleb, his excitement evident. Did you fix any cars today? Caleb laughed, the sound genuine and light. Yes, I did. I worked on a couple of engines and did some routine maintenance. It felt good to be back in the shop. Marcus noticed the difference in Caleb's demeanor. The nervousness that had been there before was replaced with a quiet confidence. It was clear that the job was more than just a way to make money. It was a way for Caleb to reclaim a part of himself. As they all sat down for dinner, Marcus and Caleb chatted about the day, Caleb sharing small anecdotes and details about his work. The conversation was easy, and it was clear that Caleb was beginning to feel more at ease in his new role. After dinner, Marcus and Caleb helped Leo with his homework, Caleb offering tips and encouragement as Leo worked through his math problems. The evening passed in a comfortable rhythm, a blend of laughter and conversation that made it clear how much Caleb's presence had already begun to positively impact their lives. When Caleb finally said his goodbyes and headed home, Marcus felt a deep sense of contentment. His first day had gone well, and the positive changes were already evident. It wasn't just about the job. It was about the hope and new beginnings that came with it. As Marcus and Leo settled down for the night, he couldn't help but reflect on how far Caleb had come in such a short time. The road ahead would still have its challenges, but Caleb was on a path to rebuilding his life, one step at a time. And as he tucked Leo into bed, Marcus felt a sense of fulfillment. Helping Caleb had been more than just a gesture of kindness. It had been a chance to make a real difference, to support someone in their journey towards a better future. Marcus kissed Leo goodnight and turned off the light, feeling a renewed sense of hope for the days ahead. The future was always uncertain, but with each new step, it felt a little brighter. The first few weeks of Caleb's new job were filled with a whirlwind of activity. Mornings began early, with Caleb arriving at the shop before the workday officially started, eager to get a head start. By now, he had settled into a routine, but the weight of his past still lingered, making each day a balancing act between new stability and old insecurities. Marcus noticed Caleb's growing confidence but also observed subtle signs of strain. One evening, as they were wrapping up dinner, Caleb seemed distant, his focus drifting. Leo was recounting a story from school, and Caleb was only half listening, his mind clearly elsewhere. "Hey Caleb, you okay?" Marcus asked, noting his distracted demeanor. Caleb looked up, his expression momentarily guarded before he forced a smile. "Yeah, just a long day. Nothing to worry about." Marcus wasn't convinced, but he let it slide. He could tell Caleb was trying to handle things on his own, perhaps not wanting to burden others with his problems. It wasn't unusual for people in Caleb's situation to struggle in silence. The next morning, Marcus was heading to the office when he saw Caleb sitting on the steps of his small apartment building. Caleb was fiddling with his phone, his brow furrowed in concentration. Marcus hesitated for a moment before approaching him. "Morning, Caleb," Marcus greeted, trying to keep his tone light. "Everything all right?" Caleb looked up, a flicker of surprise crossing his face. "Oh, hey, Marcus. Yeah, just a bit of a rough start this morning. Got a few issues I'm trying to sort out." Marcus nodded, sensing that Caleb's troubles went beyond just a rough start. "Anything I can help with?" Caleb hesitated, then shook his head. "No, it's just some financial stuff. I've got a few bills piling up, and it's been a bit overwhelming." Marcus listened, feeling a pang of empathy. He knew that financial strain could add to the pressure of trying to rebuild one's life. "If you need any help or advice, I'm here. Sometimes just talking things out can make a difference." Caleb appreciated the offer but was clearly reluctant to accept it. "Thanks, Marcus. I'll manage. I don't want to put you out." Marcus put a reassuring hand on Caleb's shoulder. "It's no trouble. We all need a little help sometimes." As Marcus left for work, he couldn't shake the concern he felt for Caleb. He knew that the pressure of his new job, combined with financial worries, was a heavy burden. It was clear that Caleb was trying hard to keep his life on track, but the struggle was evident. Later that day, Marcus was in his office when he received a call from Caleb. The tone of the conversation was professional, but Marcus could sense an underlying tension. "Hey Marcus, I'm going to need to adjust my schedule a bit. Things have been a bit hectic at work, and I've got some personal stuff to sort out." Marcus could hear the strain in Caleb's voice. "Is everything okay?" Caleb hesitated before responding. "Yeah, just juggling a lot right now. I'll manage, but I might need to take a bit of time to get things sorted." Marcus wanted to offer more help, but was aware of Caleb's pride. "All right, just let me know if you need anything. We're here to support you." After the call, Marcus spent the rest of the day thinking about Caleb. He knew that offering support without overstepping boundaries was a delicate balance. Caleb was clearly struggling with more than just the challenges of a new job. The weight of past mistakes and current financial pressures was taking its toll. In the evening, Marcus decided to visit Caleb's apartment, hoping to offer some practical help. He knocked on the door, and Caleb answered, looking surprised but pleased to see him. "Hey Marcus, what's up?" Caleb asked, his voice more relaxed than it had been on the phone. "I just wanted to check in," Marcus said, stepping inside. "How are things really going?" Caleb sighed, a hint of relief in his eyes. "It's been tough. I'm trying to keep up with the bills, and work's been demanding. I guess I didn't realize how much it would all pile up." Marcus took a seat at the small dining table, noticing the stack of unopened bills and paperwork. "I know it's not easy. Maybe we can go through some of this together. I might be able to help you find some resources or advice." Caleb looked at the papers, his shoulders slumping slightly. "I'd appreciate that. I didn't want to admit it, but it's been overwhelming." As they worked through the paperwork, Marcus offered practical advice and solutions, helping Caleb understand his options. They spent the evening discussing budgeting, potential assistance programs, and ways to manage his finances more effectively. By the end of the night, Caleb looked visibly relieved, a burden lifted from his shoulders. "Thanks, Marcus. I didn't realize how much I needed this." Marcus nodded, feeling a sense of accomplishment. "No problem. You've been doing a great job, and sometimes everyone needs a little help." As Marcus left Caleb's apartment, he felt a renewed sense of purpose. Supporting Caleb through these challenges was more than just a kind gesture. It was a way to help him rebuild his life step by step. The struggle was real, but so was the support from friends and community. Back home, Leo was already asleep, his dreams filled with the excitement of Caleb's new job and their growing friendship. Marcus reflected on how much Caleb had already achieved and how important it was to continue offering support during this crucial time. He settled into his own evening routine, feeling a mixture of exhaustion and satisfaction. The path ahead for Caleb was still fraught with challenges, but Marcus was committed to being there every step of the way. It was about more than just a job. It was about offering a lifeline and being a part of Caleb's journey towards a brighter future. As Marcus turned off the lights and headed to bed, he felt a quiet confidence that, despite the struggles, things were moving in a positive direction. With each small step, Caleb was moving closer to overcoming his past and finding a new sense of stability and hope. The days had begun to stretch into a familiar rhythm of early mornings and long hours for Caleb. His dedication to the job was undeniable, but so was the deep weariness that came with it. Despite the financial strain and the emotional toll of rebuilding his life from the ground up, Caleb had begun to find a new, profound sense of purpose in his work. However, it was clear that he was still grappling with the long shadows of his past, which lingered even in moments of triumphant progress. One Friday evening, Marcus and Leo decided to visit Caleb's apartment with a small gesture of encouragement. Leo had been eager to share a drawing he had made at school, and Marcus thought it might be a good way to lift Caleb's spirits. They arrived just as Caleb was finishing up a late shift, the faint hum of car engines and distant city sounds filling the air. Caleb opened the door, his face lighting up at the sight of them. "Hey Marcus, Leo, what brings you here?" Leo held up the drawing with a proud smile. "I made this at school. It's a picture of the park where we play. I wanted to give it to you." Caleb took the drawing, his eyes softening as he studied it. "Wow, this is amazing, Leo." "Thanks. It's great to have a reminder of the park." Marcus noticed the slight relaxation in Caleb's posture as he admired the drawing. "We thought it might brighten your day," Marcus said, stepping inside. "How's work going?" Caleb sighed, the weight of his exhaustion evident in the sound. "It's been busy, but manageable. I'm still adjusting to the pace, but it's getting better." Leo wandered around the small apartment, taking in the details of Caleb's new life. "Do you have any plans for the weekend, Caleb?" Caleb shook his head. "Not really. I was thinking of catching up on some rest and maybe organizing a few things around here." Marcus nodded, sensing Caleb's need for a break. "How about we help you out? We could spend some time organizing and maybe even grab a bite to eat afterward. It's important to take some time for yourself." Caleb looked at them, a mixture of gratitude and hesitation in his eyes. "I'd appreciate that. It's been a while since I had a chance to just relax." They spent the next few hours cleaning and organizing Caleb's apartment. Leo eagerly helped, sorting through items and placing them in neat piles. Caleb, although tired, seemed to enjoy the company and the distraction from his daily worries. As they worked, Marcus struck up a conversation. "You've made a lot of progress, Caleb. It's not just about the job. It's about rebuilding your life. And you're doing great." Caleb looked around his apartment, taking in the newly organized space and the warmth of the evening. "It feels good to have a bit of order. It's been tough, but I'm starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel." Marcus could see the change in Caleb's demeanor. The burden of his past was still there, but it was beginning to lift. Sometimes it's the small victories that make the biggest difference. "You're making strides, Caleb. Just remember that it's okay to lean on others when you need to." Caleb nodded, his expression thoughtful. "I've been trying to handle everything on my own, but I realize now that asking for help isn't a weakness. It's part of moving forward." As the evening drew to a close, they decided to go out for dinner. Caleb chose a small, cozy diner nearby, a place he'd discovered recently. Over burgers and fries, the conversation flowed easily, the atmosphere light and relaxed. Leo chattered about school and his latest adventures, while Caleb and Marcus discussed work, life, and everything in between. Caleb seemed more at ease, his laughter more genuine, his demeanor more relaxed. It was clear that the support and companionship were helping him navigate the complexities of his new life. After dinner, they walked back to Caleb's apartment, where Marcus and Leo said their goodbyes. Caleb stood in the doorway, a genuine smile on his face. "Thanks for today. It really helped." Marcus placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "Anytime. We're all in this together. Don't hesitate to reach out if you need anything." Caleb nodded, his eyes filled with appreciation. "I won't forget that. It means a lot to me." As Marcus and Leo drove home, Leo was quiet, absorbed in his thoughts. Marcus glanced over, curious. "What's on your mind, buddy?" Leo turned to his dad, a thoughtful expression on his face. "I think Caleb's really starting to be happy again. He seems different, like he's finding his way." Marcus smiled, touched by his son's insight. "Yes, he is. It's a journey, but he's making progress. And your drawing made a big difference, too." Leo beamed, proud of his contribution. "I'm glad. I want him to be happy." Back at home, as Marcus and Leo settled in for the night, Marcus reflected on the day's events. Caleb was finding a new perspective, and though the road ahead was still challenging, there was a renewed sense of hope and possibility. He knew that Caleb's journey was far from over, but the support of friends and the small, steady steps forward were making a real difference. It wasn't just about finding a job or managing finances. It was about rebuilding confidence, finding joy, and embracing a new beginning. As Marcus tucked Leo into bed and wished him good night, he felt a deep sense of satisfaction. Helping Caleb through these challenges had been a significant endeavor, but it was clear that the effort was paying off. The future was still uncertain, but with each step Caleb took, it felt a little brighter. Marcus turned off the light and headed to his own room, feeling a renewed sense of purpose and hope. The journey was ongoing, but the positive changes were a testament to the power of support, friendship, and the resilience of the human spirit.